Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we saw how we can generate an API key to use with Gemini models. In this video, we'll check out the following. First, how we can install Google Gemini Python SDK. Second, how to use SDK to call a Gemini model. And last, how to securely save your API key. So let's get started. So here I have my Python notebook open in VS Code. So the first step is to install the Python SDK provided by Google for Gemini models. So I've already done that step. You can do that as well by running pip install google-generative AI. Once you have done this step, you can move on and use this API key that you generated in your code. So how to do that? The first step is to import google.generative AI and then use it to configure the API key that you had created. Once you have done this step, then it's the time to select the model that you want to run. In my case, I've selected the model as Gemini 1.5 Flash. It is the cheapest model and it will cost us the least. So you can call it by gemini.generative model and then pass in the model name. If I print this model object that got created, it shows me I've selected the model as Gemini 1.5 Flash, right? Now we are ready to call the Gemini API. So I'll call the API by that model object that we have created. We'll use model.generateContent. This is the easiest way to call the model, right? And the question that I'm asking it is, please give me Python code to sort a list. This is a very basic and generic question, but we have not passed in anything else. We haven't restricted the model in how many responses to give, how many tokens to use. Uh, does it should it give me only one response or multiple response? So let's see what kind of response did we receive. To print the response, I'm using response.text, which will print out the response for me. Here you can see it has used a couple of different methods to sort the list, right? First, it has used a sorted method on the list. Second, it has used the sort method of the list. Third, I think it is trying to sort the list in reverse, right? So it gives us different ways and it is also providing a decent enough explanation of each different way. Now this output is truncated as it shows and it could be a lot longer. Now you do not want all different kinds of responses, right? Your cost would be more. So how do you restrict that? You can restrict that by passing in certain parameters. Let's look at that next. Now, in this code, if you'll see, I'm again calling generate content. I'm asking the same question, but I've configured certain additional parameters. Now, how do you set these parameters? You use generation underscore config and you pass in genai.types generation config. Inside this, as you can see, you can pass in different kind of parameters like temperature, top P, top K, how many number of responses do you want, max tokens. So in my case, I've used the max output tokens as 200. That means only 200 output tokens should get consumed. Post that, it should stop generating new content. This way I can limit the cost of the output tokens. Next, I've used the temperature. I've set the temperature as 0. What does this mean? This means that my output will be very logical. It won't be creative. I do not, if I'm asking it to write a poem, I can set the temperature to 1 and then it can be more creative. But in my case, I'm asking it to sort a list, which is a very definitive question. I do not want it to be creative. I want a a deterministic answer. So that's where I've set the temperature to 0. If you pass in these parameters, you'll see the response here. It is still giving me multiple methods to sort the list, but you'll see it got cut off in between. That's because we set the max output tokens to 200. and we have set the temperature to 0. So instead of trying to explain me the code all over, it has written comments here, small comments to explain what will happen when this code will run, right? So that's the difference between calling generate content with parameters and without parameters. Next, let's look at how you can store your API key. If you use the API key, like the first example here, then anyone can look at your API key. If you send this code to GitHub, everyone can use your API key and they can consume all the credits that you have. And it can cause uh, your billing to increase, your credit card to be charged. So we do not want that. What's the solution for it? Well, the first solution would be to create environment variables. These are a little bit secure than hard coding them in directly in your script. In a production environment, you will already have your environment variables set. You can just get your environment variable using OS. So I've imported OS here additionally, and then I've used os.getEnvironment. And then I've passed in Google API key, which is the environment variable which was set, right? And then if I run a query like what is the full form of WHO, it returns me that, right? So this is working. That's how you would use it in a production kind of environment. But what about your local setup? For example, here in my local system, if I am to publish this on GitHub, my API key will be shown to the entire world, right? Because I'm setting it using os.environment. So the solution to that would be to store your API key in a .env file. So this .env file will not be picked up by Git and it won't be stored in your GitHub repository. It will always remain in your local system. For me, if you see here, this is my directory where I've created a virtual environment where I've installed Python SDK, where I've uh, created this notebook. Here I've created an additional file called .env, where env is the extension of the file. If I show you this file, I've created a variable called Google underscore API underscore key underscore one. Why have I added one? So that in the example, I can show you something different. If I use Google API key, it might use the same variable that I've said before, right? Uh, to show you that it actually works, if I set it using environment file, I've set the variable name to underscore one in this environment file, and I've pasted in my API key. Now I've installed python-env using pip install. Next, I've ran from .env import load underscore .env. Now in my case, the .env file is in the same directory where the notebook is. So I do not need to specify the path here. But if your .env is stored somewhere else, you can pass in that path here inside load underscore .env and it will find that environment file in that directory and will load it. In my case, it is in the same directory, so it will load it directly. Now I've used the same name, which I have set up here in the .env file while getting the environment variables. So what is this doing? Load underscore .env. It is taking all the variables that I've defined here and converting them to environment variables, right? Parameters to environment variable. That's where I'm able to get environment variable. And then I'm running the same query. What is the full form of WHO? And I get a good response. So that was it for this video. In the next video, we'll see examples to explain what are tokens and how they are used in Gemini API. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.